Matt George joining us to talk Kings basketball on the most inopportune day imaginable. Can I got it.
Kuminga got traded today.
Oh my God, we'd be on the air for hours.
You know, you can bench me. I can be benched.
To be honest with you, I don't know what else to say about Micah Parsons. Like, we are not in Dallas. We are not in Green Bay. It's a major story. Great time filler for the last 2 hours, but like we've said what we've had to say. There's actually a couple of Kings things I want to talk about. I want Kenny to bring that Zach LaVine, I guess, video you were watching to Matt's attention. Schefter tweeted this. I just want everybody to do this because I was looking at it on my way in, back in during the commercial, and it made me laugh. Schefter tweeted, new Packers linebacker Micah Parsons is one of 2 NFL players to have at least 12 sacks in each of his first 4 seasons. The other was Reggie White. The first comment, Hardaway money sign S, swap penny, says, Dallas won the trade overall. We got 2 first-round picks and a solid DT. We good, Dallas. We good. Let's go. I read that in TC's voice, and it was magnificent.
There is an argument that I don't know about one to trade. I don't know nothing about that, but that might have been the right move.
You're a sports fan, Matt. What do you think about this Micah Parsons trade?
That Dallas has a new reputation of trading away untouchable, untradeable star players in their prime. So, hey,
Dallas
go Dallas, I guess. Like, yeah, Dallas the city. If you're a young star, Cooper Flagg, start sweating because in like 3 years you're going to be traded.
Which one? I asked Damian the question earlier. Which one do you think was the bigger trade or the bigger deal, like losing Luka or losing Micah Parsons? If I was a Dallas sports fan.
It's Luka for a multitude of reasons. The primary one being it was such a curveball that the entire world thought it was fake, including half of the NBA that was actively on social media. And I remember working that day being absolutely dumbfounded and trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't. The entire world thought Shams was hacked. Like that trade being so shocking and something that we've never seen before. In the NFL, I guess we've seen megastars get traded over contract disputes. Not a lot, but we've seen it before. Luka was so just out of the blue, out of the ordinary insanity by the Dallas Mavericks organization. And I guess it's worked out for them now, I suppose, but the Micah Parsons one, at least we all thought there was a chance of this happening. Is I heard you guys talking earlier when you were doing the crossover that today is essentially like the Monday, or tomorrow is like the Monday of their week 1. So they gotta get something done. They gotta hurry up. So Micah put what pressure he could on him, and I guess it worked out for him because he got the bag too.
Yeah, they got something done, all right.
Yes, they did. Michael Parsons is a championship player. At least in my opinion, he is. Matt, I want to bring you into a conversation that we were having yesterday with the insiders. Who on the Sacramento Kings do you think is a championship player on the Sacramento Kings?
Wow. Keon Ellis.
I think that one was universal.
Hopefully Keegan Murray, if he can live up to the, like, if Keegan Murray can be what I think Keegan Murray, and I've been consistent with this, can be a better version of Michael Porter Jr. And Michael Porter Jr. won a ring with Dallas. So I think Keegan Murray has the potential. He won't be the number 1 guy or even the number 2 guy, but I'd put Keegan Murray in that conversation. None of the top guys. I think Domantas Sabonis can be if he's like your 3rd option. But there's very specific parameters around Domantas Sabonis, which has always been the conversation of you have to have very specific things around him for him to be it. Domantas Sabonis is without a doubt one of the best centers in the NBA, but as much as we've seen the center, the resurgence of the center position with Nikola Jokic winning multiple MVPs and of course Joel Embiid winning an MVP in there, like the center position is still unbelievably important and impactful, but you have to be a featured offensive piece as well as the well-rounded player that Sabonis and Jokic are, and Sabonis doesn't have that desire or willingness offensively to take over games, so I hesitate with him. I wouldn't. It feels disrespectful not to include DeMar DeRozan, but based off of his entire career sample size and how everything went in Toronto, it's hard to put him in that category. And then I guess I hope Nick Clifford, but I haven't seen anything beyond that. But I think that the two easiest ones for me are Keon and Keegan, but as role players on a championship team, not feature. I don't think there is a feature player or a top guy on this roster that you can say with confidence is a championship caliber player.
I agree with that. I said Sabonis and Levine can be championship players. I think when people talk about both of these type of guys, and I think DeMar DeRozan as well. Well, the question was actually like, who is on the team that if the Kings were to become a championship team, who would still be on this team? Like, who could you still see being on this team? That's why I didn't put DeMar DeRozan on there. But I also think DeMar can be a championship level player, like a major contributor for a championship winning team. And like I said, I think for whatever reason, we as NBA observers and everything, we look at guys that are maybe on losing teams and attribute that to the individual. Say they're losing because of the individual. They're losing because that's a losing player. And I don't think that's necessarily true nor fair. Like if you put Zach LaVine or Domantas Sabonis in a different situation where, like you said, Matt, Domantas is the third best player, or maybe you feel that way about Zach LaVine, and they're not asked to carry a franchise, the way people talk about it, you would say, well, just based because they've never won, they would torpedo that team that they're on, that Knicks team that they're on, or Thunder team that they're on. And I don't think that's the case. That when you look at some of those guys, it just means, yeah, they can't be your number one, but they have attributes that you absolutely need for being on a winning team.
Well, I agree with that to some extent, but wasn't the question in Sacramento? And like I see other people bringing up, like DeMar DeRozan could be a championship caliber piece off the bench, but how are you building that in Sacramento? Like you're not. You don't have nearly the talent to push DeMar DeRozan to the bench in any sort of championship role. That would be like if you traded DeMar midseason to Cleveland. Okay, maybe now he's a championship caliber piece or addition to that team. With LaVine and Sabonis, again, if we're talking about here in Sacramento, those are two guys that are combined making almost $100 million. If they aren't your top guy in Sacramento, that means you're going out and getting another player that probably is worth around that much, or you hit an absolute home run in the draft short term that turns into a generational win now superstar, and they're carrying that team for you. So they're like, to me, there's no, barring like some kind of fantasy situation that nobody sees coming, there's no realistic scenario where those two players are championship caliber players in Sacramento unless something else comes in and happens that isn't here now, and we have no reason to believe is coming in the next 2 years before at least LaVine's contract runs out. Which I don't believe after that contract, LaVine is going to be a Sacramento King.
We discussed that a little bit yesterday. Like, I guess Zach is 30?
Mm-hmm.
Contracts up. Well, yeah, I guess I understand that in 32 years. Do you think at 32 years old, do you think any of it depends on, again, 32 years old, that's a couple of, being a couple of years away. Is there we were talking about this, all kind of started because we were talking, it was like an evolution of a conversation about pathways to a championship. And I think you and I discussed this when we did Locked On together, that, there's tanking, losing, trading superstars, depleting your roster, doing all like there's that. And that's certainly a way of going about things. But how can the Sacramento Kings adjust over the next few years? What can the Sacramento Kings do with DeMar DeRozan on the roster before he's gone, with Zach LaVine on the roster before he's gone? What type of moves can they make over the next few years that perhaps keeps them from bottoming out, but doesn't sacrifice anything they want to do moving forward? You mentioned Nick Clifford. It feels like a lot of any hopes for that conversation that we're having, it feels like a lot of it starts like now. You got to hit with Nick. and you probably want Max to wind up being a pretty solid player for you too. You can't have too many draft picks, no matter where they are, miss when you're trying to retool, I guess, this way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it is the draft, right? If the question is like, what's the path, the most likely path forward to the Kings building a championship contender, it's this season solidifying pieces like Keon, Keegan, Neek, and Maxime, having a good idea of what those 4 players are, and hopefully those 4 steady, solid contributors to your foundation going forward. Obviously, you have to re-sign both Keon and Keegan, and then Perry has to hit in the draft. And it's using the assets that are on this roster right now appropriately, to whether it's acquiring future draft compensation or moving those pieces to bring in a young player or 2 that end up just working out or making sense. And these are things that are hard to predict. Like, you have to move one of Levine, DeRozan, or Sabonis and get a young piece in return that maybe has upside that hits here. What you don't do is trade any of those 3 pieces or any of the aforementioned 4 young guys that I said for a win now talent. That doesn't make sense. Even if the Kings are ahead of schedule or surprising people, I just don't think that's in the best interest of Scott Perry. Then we don't think the Kings are, well, I know the Kings are not going to outwardly tank. So we don't think the Sacramento Kings are going to enter the draft lottery in the next couple of years with top 5 lottery odds, but maybe they can do what they did twice in the last like 10 years, which is move up. They moved up to number 4, surprisingly, to get Keegan. We know what happened when they moved up to number 2 with Marvin Bagley. So maybe they get lucky in the lottery again, or not, or they end up with a lottery pick or 2 over the next couple of years. And Scott Perry, hopefully in those couple of years, finds the new franchise piece to build around. Like that is the path forward. I just don't see any feasible way where the Sacramento Kings, in any kind of trade market scenario or free agency scenario over the next handful of years, go out and find a true foundational number 1 star option that you absolutely need to even be talked about as a championship contender. And we're talking a player that comes in and takes over the De'Aaron Fox responsibilities while actually being better than De'Aaron Fox. That's what the Kings are looking for. And it's not going to be easy to find outside of the draft.
I mean, those guys don't grow on trees.
No,
there's 32 teams in the league. I don't think there's 32 number 1s.
Yep, you got to find it.
Math. So, but my thing is, especially when you say that, in the meantime, like, you're always looking for, you're always searching for. What do you do? You try to win.
Yeah,
you try to compete with what you got. And I think that's where Scott Perry and Doug Christie are. Just because they're, and this is also I feel like the misconception that a lot of people have who root for the Kings and are upset when they hear them say they're trying to win this year. Just because you're trying to win doesn't mean you're not trying to find that guy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, you could win 42 games this year and go to the draft and be looking for a guy at 14 and be like, maybe he could be Jalen Williams. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people look at it, it's one or the other. If you're trying to win, then you're not trying to find your franchise player in the future through the draft. No, you're trying to do that even if you do win. So I just think, I was watching this thing on Zach LaVine, and I just feel like people are so quick to just, he gone. Like, we don't want him here when we get back, when his contract gets done. And I don't think that's the best way to look at Zach LaVine, and I don't think it should be so cut and dry. That's a hell of a basketball player.
Yes.
That's a hell of an offensive talent, and he has shortcomings, which keeps him from being one of those number 1 type guys. But I think he's a pretty solid number 2, and there's a lot of number 2s out there that make that type of money that you would look at and you'd be like, this ain't no franchise guy. You don't put the franchise on his back, but nobody has a problem with it because they have the number 1 there to make everything all right. That's not Zach's fault that they don't have the number 1 here.
No, not, and the whole, I did a podcast on this recently too, Casey. To me, the whole concept of frustrations about Zach LaVine in Sacramento has almost nothing to do with Zach LaVine, and certainly is none of it is Zach LaVine's fault. It's the circumstance of how Zach LaVine got here and the bag that Chicago gave LaVine that the Kings acquired. No one can blame LaVine for signing the contract that was placed in front of him. And his numbers offensively were so incredible last season that if we took away the context of you traded De'Aaron Fox for him at the end of an absolute disaster junior high drama season with your general manager on the way out and the owner's the one that pulled the trigger to get this done, and you have a new general manager coming in who said former comments about whether or not that player, Zach LaVine, is a winning player or not. Like, it's just a comedy of errors that has resulted in this idea or this circumstance that, yeah, I think Zach LaVine is gone in 2 years. And it's not because, by the end of this contract, we're going to be desperate to get LaVine out of Sacramento. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. I think it's in 2 years from now, I think we're going to see the same things that we see now when assuming, please God, that Doug Christie is still the head coach and Scott Perry is still the general manager, please, when they're laying out their traits, identity traits of what they want in a basketball team, and you just do a simple application of who we believe and who we know Zach LaVine to be to those traits, he doesn't fit enough of those boxes. But he's not alone on this roster of guys that are in the same boat. I think Malik Monk is in the same boat, which is one of the reasons why we see that the Kings are looking to move on from Malik Monk. He doesn't seem like he fits the long-term vision for Scott Perry. And my thing is, okay, if you feel that you can bring Zach LaVine back at the end of these 2 years, but as a number two, like you're talking about, Casey, I completely agree. You have a flamethrower that can go off. And we saw in the very short period of time last season how hot Zach LaVine can get very quickly, right? He took over a number of fourth quarters in the final third of the season that was here in Sacramento. And that included that random stretch when we were like, does Zach LaVine want to play basketball? What's going on? Why is he not shooting? So I believe he's going to put on a show a number of times here in Sacramento this upcoming season. But if you're bringing him back on, say, $30 million a year or whatever, as a number two, how are you getting that number one? Well, you're probably either trading away Domantas Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan, or over the next 2 years, the Kings were such a disappointment that they got a high draft pick, or got so lucky in the draft lottery that they got a high draft pick, to which then I could turn around and go, well, if the Kings were a disappointment, why are you bringing back Zach LaVine, who was part of that disappointment? So that's how I look at it. I don't think it makes sense long-term for LaVine to be a part of the Sacramento Kings. And it shouldn't just be an indictment on LaVine. It should be an indictment on just the pathway or lack thereof of this organization.
You can stretch the idea of luck out too, to where the Sacramento Kings make the playoffs and still draft well. You know, we've been over, Kenny, we've done this a million times where we talk about draft picks or great players and where they're drafted. Yes, there are a lot drafted, you know, at 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can find players later in the draft. You can find impactful guys, the ones later in the draft.
OKC had one player drafted in the top 5. 2 of those guys in the starting lineup were undrafted. SJ was 11th, I think. If you know what you're doing, you can do a good job throughout the draft.
If you know what you're doing.
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to watch unfold as Matt is talking about an indictment or potential indictment on the Sacramento Kings, or as to why, you know, maybe Zach LaVine won't be here outside of the 2 years remaining on his deal, and who knows how much changes next year when that contract becomes expiring. How much more attractive does he become to a particular franchise, or any franchise that could be looking for a scorer, could be looking to contend, or could be looking to shed dollars, and wants to use Zach LaVine's near $50 million to be able to do that. But with all of those things in place, Matt, it feels like there's so much stuff in flux, and not even in flux for the next couple months. It feels like it might be in flux for the next couple of years. So I ask you a question that Jesse asked us earlier this week. Do you think Doug Christie can fail this year?
No, I don't. Well, yeah, no, because the one area that I would consider a failure for a coach is completely losing a locker room. But I ranted about this earlier, and then I heard Casey talking about it, I think, yesterday. If we hear even a remote whisper of somebody in that locker room giving up on Doug Christie, get them the hell out. Like, especially if you're a repeat offender, especially if you're someone who is part of the group over the last season that turned on Mike. And this doesn't have to become a Mike Brown thing at all. So don't be distracted by my support of Mike Brown through this entire process. Doug Christie's the coach now. Mike Brown is in New York. Best of luck to him. I love Mike. Wish he were still here. Doesn't matter. Doug Christie is the head coach right now. The Kings have committed to Doug. If anybody starts whispering and talking about, oh, Doug Christie's not the coach for me, or man, Doug wasn't the guy, or whatever, the entire organization, top to bottom, I'm talking from Scott Perry all the way up to Vivek Ranadive, need to have Doug Christie's back 100% and support him. You chose him. Some people believe you developed him or handpicked him for this position years ago. It was written in the stars. This is the guy that you've wanted for years. Well, he's there now. You best not turn on him. You best not throw him to the wolves, even if this team is 20-40 through the first 60 games of the season. I don't care. You have to look at what you should have been looking at all along, which is the roster first and the foundation of that roster that is not succeeding. And I'm not saying that if anybody's complaining, it's going to be Levine or DeRozan or Sabonis. It doesn't have to be the top guys. I love Keegan Murray, and I don't think this is in Keegan Murray's personality. But if I heard tomorrow that Keegan Murray isn't vibing with Doug Christie, that is where we get into the category of the saying that Scott Perry has. I want volunteers, not hostages. Well, Keegan, you're a hostage. Goodbye. Keon, you're a hostage. Goodbye. Perry's already shown he has no problem including fan favorites in trades if he thinks it improves this roster and it executes his vision. I don't think Perry would hesitate to move any of those guys if it fit that vision, backed up what he said, and made sense long-term for the Sacramento Kings. And that includes Keon and Keegan. So if there's anything to me that cannot happen this season, it's any kind of discontent or disconnection between the coaching staff and the locker room or the roster. And unless it's something so ridiculously egregious, which is not going to happen, like Doug does something stupid or his coaching staff does something stupid, which we can't predict those, so it's no point even bringing them up, then I'm picking the side of Doug Christie and Scott Perry and this organization in those conversations at least next year, 100% of the time. Because the circumstances of the last few years carry weight in that. So no, I don't think Doug Christie can fail. I think he can be disappointing. I think we can learn some things about Doug that, maybe he's not as strong in these areas as we thought, or hey, maybe he needs to get better at the X's and O's and stuff like that, which I think we have kind of inklings of that, which is why you brought in some veterans like Mike Woodson on this coaching staff. Every coach has weaknesses, and they're supposed to back those weaknesses or support those weaknesses with their assistant coaches and their coaching staff. So that's common. And maybe we learn a little more about who Doug is as a head coach and what works and what doesn't. And hopefully Doug can adapt. But he's a former NBA player. If anything, he knows how to adapt to this game. So I have more confidence in that than any player who starts going, yeah, I'm not vibing with Doug Christie. All right, well, vibe on this Southwest Airlines flight to wherever.
Damn. Yeah, no, that's just what it is. They're lucky if they get Southwest. They might be on Spirit, if you ask me. Because
they ain't getting the A group.
You're not getting
they ain't getting the A group.
Because anybody who's saying that was probably here previously, and you've already played that card.
Yeah, that's it.
You've already played that card.
You get one.
That's it.
You get one.
So I'm not trying to hear
someone say you shouldn't,
anymore.
but you do. Right. You get one.
Well, you shouldn't have even had the first card, to be honest with you, but that's just me.
Agreed. But you got your one. You're not getting two. You're not getting two. And especially, I'm Scott Perry. I know what the hell I'm doing now. This ain't the other guy. I'm here now. We're not going through all that. So I agree with you 100%, Matt. There should be none of that going on. And because of that, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that Beam team one year. Not necessarily like the talent or anything like that. But I always thought, and we talked about it a lot on the show, that group of players had nothing else to do in their careers at that time than win basketball games. Like everything, if you wanted more money, you had to win to show you deserve that money. If you wanted a bigger role, to prove that you deserved that role, you had to win basketball games. If you wanted to get this stigma off of you of being this type of player or having this type of reputation, the only way that was going to change is if you were on a winning team. And I'm not predicting that the outcome will be the same thing. But outside of maybe DeMar DeRozan, everybody else has a reputation. Everybody has a little bit of that stink that they were around and got Mike Brown fired this past year. The only way any of this stuff changes is if you win basketball games. You can't even, Sabonis or somebody else like that can't even have great numbers and this team be a sorry basketball team and people look at them differently. The only thing that changes their perception right now is if they win basketball games. And we'll see if they stay committed to that, even through some of the tough times.
KC, we could take it a step further. We could go down this roster. We could go down this organization, the front office, the ownership group, and we could talk about for each one of these prominent figures why they have something to prove this season. I mean, you can go all the way to the top to Vivek Ranadive as proving something as an owner that you can win more than a flash in the pan season or two. And I mean, I think DeMar DeRozan you can. And it's not, no one blames DeMar DeRozan for what happened last season. But DeMar has carried the reputation around the league of he couldn't win the big game. He couldn't get it done. He's also fighting against father time. And the last thing any player wants to hear outside of their own body is it's time to hang it up. Right. DeMar wants to be in control of that. Hey, I'm leaving on my terms. I'm done. My body's telling me I'm done. You're not going to, some person on Fox Sports Radio or whatever is not going to tell me that my career is
hell no,
done.
He ain't gonna say nothing.
Then you're like Domantas Sabonis. Do we even need to Sabonis has dealt with the critics for years and proved every single one of them right on national television against Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks in the play-in game. Keegan Murray, you're playing for your next contract, buddy. You want to be paid for more than Jabari Smith Jr.? Go out and play and perform. You want to prove that you can be a top guy? Now's the time to do it, dude. Keon Ellis, you are paid $2.5 million next season. You're paid less than almost the majority of the roster, and yet you're a top rotational piece. If you are trying to prove even to your own organization that F you messed up by picking up my option, I'm going to make you regret it, or I'm going to make you pay me what I'm worth before I become an unrestricted free agent, so be it. We could do a whole exercise, guys, of going down this list. Doug Christie, hey, you got your shot, buddy, but are you an NBA head coach or are you not? We can go down the entire list of this organization and talk about why they have something to prove, and what checks the boxes for every single one of these guys is winning basketball games. It's not individual numbers. It's performing and winning basketball games. So that's what this season is about. We could even include Scott Perry in that. No one blames Scott Perry for the state of this organization right now. But Scott Perry's last trip in New York, ultimately, they didn't get to the status they're at now until Scott left. So Scott might have something to prove too. So, hey, I agree with you completely. I want to see this organization come into next season with the mindset of nothing is promised to us. Nothing is owed to us. Everything we have to earn. And anybody who's not willing to embrace that, hostages, not volunteers. Get on the plane.
Southwest.
No
boarding group C.
No more free bags.
Boy, you sitting in the middle on that boarding group
good.
C.
Not good. And I don't know if the big people 2 seats thing has kicked in yet.
I know, right?
I was offended by that, but I'm not sure why. It felt terrible. But at the same time, it was like, I don't know.
If you're taking up 2
no, I
seats,
understand. I understand. You think there's a little you think I don't want to say pressure. I don't know that that's the right word. You think Doug is going to press himself a little bit to make sure that this is a huge year for Keon Ellis, and it's a huge year for the Sacramento Kings and Keon Ellis. Do you think Doug has a little extra motivation or a little more extra work to make sure he has a role, a very specific role for Keon Ellis that he could thrive in this year?
I think we know who Keon Ellis is, and one of the biggest things about who Keon has shown himself to be in his short NBA career is someone who can thrive with inconsistency, because he was vaulted into the starting lineup when De'Aaron Fox got hurt and played well. There was that streak. Remember that streak of the Kings being undefeated and Keon Ellis starts for a while? And the majority of those were when De'Aaron Fox was out, right? So I think Keon has proven that given last season, he had a phenomenal season amidst absolute chaos here in Sacramento. And he was steady and phenomenal on a nightly basis, including coaching changes and multiple fluctuations of playing time and roles. And he was really, really, really good for the Kings. I say that to say, I don't think anything that that Keon Ellis does well or doesn't do well, I don't think will reflect much on Doug. I think Doug would be celebrated if he emphasized Keon and continued to play Keon and Keon continued to thrive. I think Doug would get some sort of credit with that, but I think it would mostly go to Keon, and then the conversation would become, "Ooh, Kings, now that paycheck just went up. Today's price is not yesterday's price," type thing, right? So I think that would be more of the conversation. But if Doug Christie has put more of a pressure on himself than any coach here in Sacramento since Rick Adelman to win, because of his past. And Doug is very open about unfinished business in Sacramento and how important that is to him and how he takes that personally, right? Like Mike Brown could come in here and again, as much as I love Mike Brown could come in here after winning a ring with the Golden State Warriors and going, "Well, this is a mess, but this is another shot for me, and I think I can figure it out, and I think I can fix it." Doug Christie's coming in here like, this is my spot. This is my place. These are my people. I'm gonna win for my city. Like this, we got to do this. So Doug is already putting enough pressure on himself to succeed, and I think he knows, like we all know, the best way to succeed short term is by playing Keon Ellis. So just play him, and I hope Keon does find a more established NBA role to where we can go, that's it. But Keon's role has been, put me with any combination of players, put me with any rotational spot, put me in any moment of the game, first quarter, fourth quarter, starting, coming off the bench, doesn't matter. I'm going to play the same way, and I'm going to be really, really good. And now you're going to pay me. Like that's Keon.
Pay the man. Pay the man. Switch gears just a little bit, man. Where are you at this Friday?
I am I'm in Elk Grove. I'm at Bradshaw Christian versus Vista Del Lago. I'm actually trying to keep my eyes open right now because I was up at 6 a.m. this morning at Vista Del Lago's football practice. But yeah.
Are you acting like 6 a.m. early? What'd you wake up so late for?
Well, I'm not a psychopath like you, Mr. Garage Workout Man. And two, I got off of work last night at 11:45 p.m.
Okay, yeah, that's different. That's different.
So,
that's different.
A little bit of a tight turnaround there, but no, football practice in the morning, those are vibes, man. Especially up in Folsom at Vista Del Lago, they got a beautiful stadium up there. Watching the sunrise while playing football, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It does look like a college campus, to be honest. But yeah, Vista Del Lago Eagles versus Bradshaw Christian Pride. So last season they met week 2, so it's almost an exact year ago tomorrow. And Bradshaw won 50-48. So it was a good game. So we're hoping for more of that.
No doubt. Were you at Grant last week?
No, Kevin was out there. I was back holding it down in the studio, which we were talking about this in the studio too, guys. Like I watched the game. I thought Grant completely shot themselves in the foot multiple times, and a team like Folsom is going to take advantage when you have silly penalties and things like that. But like we and other stations, I think, ran stories about Grant, and there were statements that like Coach Carl Reed put out, and like the athletic director of the entire school district put out a statement after that game about I thought it was the silliest, most ridiculous stuff on the planet. Like there was not a fight, there was not
about
a brawl
stuff?
about just the entire game and how Grant acted. It's like that's Grant football. Like I'm not saying that like they're okay getting penalties and they're okay shoving people stuff but Grant plays with an attitude. They've always done that since I was going to Rockland and I watched Shaq Thompson or Roseville, excuse me, at Wood Creek High School. And I was watching Shaq Thompson destroy everybody in his path. Like that's Grant's attitude. That's who they are. That's their identity. And that's what makes them special. And there's a reason why they've won 2 state titles in the last 3 years. Like that is who they are. And when Folsom comes in on national television, Folsom being the crown jewel of Sac Joaquin section football, Grant is going to feel a certain type of way about it and play with a certain fire. Again, did they go too far and get too many penalties? They had over 100 penalty yards in the first half. Yes, they lost the football game because of it. But I thought we're getting statements from people like Grant needs to learn from this and stuff. And our student athletes will go, it's football. It's highly competitive athletes, including people that already have signed huge offers to go play at D1 programs. Like they're chirping, they're talking, they're playing hard. And I thought it was silly that people made a big deal out of it. It was a hard fought, trash talking football game. Folsom won because Folsom's Folsom. Grant's going to be just fine. Like they're going to be great this season. People were the things that I saw were silly, just silly about Grant.
I agree with you. I saw the same thing. Like you said, Matt, it's not like there was a bench clearing brawl. There was 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty twice. Like it wasn't the biggest thing in the world at all.
And people
here's the lesson to be learned. Don't do that and get your ass whooped.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't, and like you wear that now.
Absolutely.
You got your ass kicked on national TV and everyone's talking about that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, you should do.
If you do, it better be 50-48 or whatever Matt just said.
Well, you should be embarrassed by the final score and by losing the game, but not to a point where there has to be statements about the student athletes needing to grow and be better. Like that, it was blown way out of proportion. Grant made mistakes, but I also know, like I can tell you this from my belief. No Grant coach has told me this, but I love the Grant coaching staff. I have that pre-game penalty when one of their players came out and kind of shoulder checked a player and bumped into a coach, and got a penalty flag assessed to the kickoff. Grant will take that penalty to establish the tone every single game. They don't care because, again, they didn't start a pregame brawl. Like that's setting the tone. Now, to your point, didn't work, and Folsom kind of laughed at you and then took full advantage of you. So you have to back it up with a victory. But that's Grant football. And I think people just blew it way out of proportion. I wish I was there. Kevin told me it was a great atmosphere. It looked like an awesome time. The embarrassing part for Grant is the final score. It's not how they acted.